So are the new Samsung watches, the Watch 7 and the Ultra, an innovative hardware platform that will trounce the competition? Well, maybe. It could be if Samsung plays it right. And that's what we're going to talk about in this video. Hi folks, welcome back to the channel. Hope you're all happy and healthy and doing well, getting out there and exercising. And I think what Samsung has shown us so far is a very interesting hardware platform. And what makes it so innovative, and those of you who have smartwatches will appreciate that the watches that you have either a green LED light or a red LED light. And if you're really, really lucky, you might have a red and a green. But that's about it. And the only thing that those are good at really is sort of heart rate stuff, heart rate monitoring when you're out walking or running or jogging or whatever. They're okay for VO2 max and pulse ox, but not great. And they certainly haven't done anything in terms of blood pressure measurement or anything like that. And this is where I think Samsung's innovation comes in. If you've had a careful look at it, you will see that their new watches have 6 LEDs, or rather LEDs for 6 different wavelengths of light. They have red, yellow, green, blue, violet, and ultraviolet. And so the colors cover pretty much the entire visible light spectrum. And then they have ultraviolet, which gives them more capabilities, though we don't really know yet what range of ultraviolet light they're going to cover. But the good thing about that potentially is that should enable them to detect and measure a number of different metabolites and vital signs. If you will recall, for those of you who have watched my videos in the past, a while back we talked about Rockley Photonics. They were looking to develop a chip that would have multiple wavelengths of light. And the intent of that was indeed to track and monitor a variety of different metabolites and vital signs, the like of blood pressure and blood glucose and lactate and alcohol and maybe cortisol for stress or lipids for cholesterol and that like. All very useful things that right now require blood lab work, but that they were working on. And so, in effect, and I don't know if Samsung has a single chip or multiple chip underneath the cover, but clearly they're going in a very similar direction, and presumably very much for the same reason. Because as you expand the wavelengths of light that you have on the watches, you can presumably capture more data in terms of metabolites and vital signs. And so that actually sounds terrific, and I think that is very innovative. Now, if we look at what Samsung is doing right now, I do appreciate that they offer blood pressure in a number of countries outside of the US. But to be perfectly honest, that hasn't been terribly accurate, which is why they're not offering it in the US, because they couldn't possibly get an FDA approval for that. So hopefully the new platform will fix that, and they will be able to offer reliable, accurate blood pressure. They're also conducting some interesting clinical trials that they've registered with clinicaltrials.gov, for those of you who want to go there and have a look at them. They are conducting a depression/mindfulness index study with Mass General Hospital in Boston, where they're looking at populations with depression and without, and presumably are trying to tease out differences there to create this mindfulness index. That could certainly be quite useful. They're also continue to conduct blood pressure studies in the Czech Republic, and they're doing some sleep work in Sao Paulo. And hopefully they're working on other things as well that haven't sort of hit a stage where they require clinical trials, but hopefully we'll get there. Now, what I really think is critical here is that they hopefully have an accurate hardware platform. And now they need to hurry up to develop the software, the algorithms, the digital biomarkers, if you want. And if they do, then I think they will succeed in putting a lot of pressure on some of their competitors, who are sort of very much stuck in the rut. But to do that, once again, they need to have, Samsung that is, need to have a critical mass of these digital biomarkers for metabolites and vital signs that we've talked about. They need to do it pretty quickly. I mean, otherwise you're giving the competition a chance to upgrade their hardware, which they hopefully will. And so if Samsung can bring the hardware that they have and the software and do it accurately, accuracy hasn't necessarily been Samsung's strong suit, but if they can fix it with this new hardware platform with 6 different wavelengths of light, that would be ideal. And if they can do that, then hopefully they can put some pressure on the competition if they, combine it with new software. So, where does that leave us? Well, what about the competition? And Apple has made a lot of noise about wanting to help people manage their health, but they quite frankly haven't done much of anything about it. They seem to be very much stuck in the rut, continuing to do pretty much the same thing. I think, the best thing that you can say about the Apple Watch, which is not a bad thing, is that it's a miniature iPhone that also captures your heart rate that you can take with you on your runs or walks and bicycling and whatnot. And that's fine, but it's not a tool that gives you, much valuable information about your physiology, which I think is something that Samsung has a chance to do here. What about the other ones? The, Garmin, Whoop, and Polar? Well, Garmin obviously has a strength in mapping and navigation, as well as battery life. And yes, they obviously track heart rate and provide analytics and things like that. But, I would not necessarily expect them to go whole hog in terms of tracking metabolites and whatnot. That's really not their strength. I think Whoop is a different story. Whoop is about recovery. They've always been very clear about the fact that, and they're correct about this, of course, is that exercise is sort of where you weaken and strain yourself, and then you need to have good recovery so you can exercise again. And so from that perspective, I think Samsung, if they do the right things, could be a threat to Whoop. And the question becomes, can Whoop respond to that? Apple obviously has the resources to compete with Samsung if they decide to. Whoop is a question mark. They're a privately owned VC-funded company, and so who knows? And Polar, well, I think Polar has to decide what they're going to do if Samsung actually punches through and develops what I hope they're working on. Is Polar going to compete with Garmin in the sports segment? I'm not sure about that. Or they compete with Samsung in the health segment. I think that's going to be a tough decision for them. But once again, all of this hinges on Samsung actually executing on its strategy. It looks like they have the hardware now. Now they need to have the software, the algorithms for a critical mass of digital biomarkers which are reflective of our metabolites and vital signs and give us the relevant ones. I think it's pretty clear that one of their next ones is going to be the Advanced Glycation End Products Index, which I made a separate video that I released a few days ago about. The Mindfulness Index sounds like something that they're working on, and if they're conducting clinical trials, and hopefully they're going well, that could be the next thing after that. But what else are they going to come up with and how soon? I think this will be very interesting to see, and clearly, everybody else who's in this business is taking the Samsung watches apart, or will be as soon as they get them, and will be clear about the fact that Samsung now has a much wider range of wavelengths across which they can collect data. Then they will have to think about what it is that they want to do about that. And hopefully, that will result in something that is good for us consumers. Competition can be a really good thing if you're the consumer, not necessarily so if you're one of the competitors, but hey, that's life. So, in any event, I hope you found it useful, entertaining, or enjoyable. Please let me know. Feel free to ask, obviously, as always, questions that you might have. Be well, and we'll talk to you soon. Take good care. Bye-bye.